Okay, and we're live.
Hello, everybody. Good noon. My name is Brian Heater. I am the managing editor at A3. I am happy to be with you for the next 30 or so minutes for another episode of Automate Live. This time, we are joined by someone with whom I have crossed paths several times in several different time zones. Andrea Thomaz is the co-founder and CEO of Austin-based Diligent Robotics. She is kind enough to speak with me today ahead of our appearance, well, I guess our appearance and her appearance at the Humanoid Robot Forum in Seattle next month. We're going to be speaking for about 25 or so minutes, and then we're going to open the floor up to questions. So please put your questions in chat if you have any for her. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Brian.
So we're going to start by going way back in time, and getting back to my roots a little bit too, to the kind of the pitch deck days. 2015, 2016, the dark ages of technology. For her, first of all, I'm trying to imagine those initial pitch decks and investor meetings. Was the humanoid form factor really a part of the conversation from the outset?
Yeah, that's a great question. The form factor discussion has changed so much in the last 10 or so years. Um, so at Diligent, we were always had the thesis that, Vivian and I started the company. We started pitching people, like you said, back in 2015, 2016, and really with the conviction that mobile manipulation was going to be where it's at in terms of robots delivering value and really being able to flexibly work alongside people. But we had to really convince people. Investors were asking every single time we'd be in a meeting, why do you need the arm? What's the arm? The arm seems expensive. What do you need an arm for? Why would, like, you can just move around. What do you need the arm for? So every single meeting you really had to justify and explain, like, the bomb cost of adding the complexity. Whereas, like, fast forward today, there's no question that mobile manipulation in general purpose form factors are, where the value is going to be at. So that's been refreshing to see people kind of come around to the value of mobile manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, now it's kind of gone completely in the other direction right now. It's
The
like, where are the
opposite, right?
legs? Why does it have legs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And it strikes me that doors and elevators, I mean, that's likely what convinced investors that it was really important to have an arm on this robot.
Yeah. Yeah. So the fact that in order to even do a transport task in a hospital like Moxi does, you have to navigate a busy, crowded human environment. And there is just so much variability in how you're going to find, doors and elevator buttons located, whether, so sometimes you have to, you have to scan a security badge and then go around the corner to open the door. So there's just a lot of variability in human environments. And so that's the real benefit of a general purpose platform. That's the value of being able to kind of drop in a robot and have it learn the environment.
Yeah, so you are using general purpose in this context, just meaning that it kind of, I guess, potentially has the flexibility to open up to different purposes in the future.
Yeah, so I think of so I like to think of Moxie as an MVP humanoid in today's,
Mm.
like, form factor, in today's, like, realm of form factor, because we have wheels with one arm, and that gives you the flexibility to move around the environment. We have a small enough form factor that, Moxie can basically go anywhere that people go in the physical space. But then with the arm, you can train that. In our case, it's got multiple degrees of freedom. That arm was not designed to just do one thing. So that in that case, being able to do different things in the world is predicated on having a kind of general purpose arm that you can do things. We can add to that complexity over time and do, more dexterous manipulation with different end effectors. We could add another arm to do two-armed manipulation. And, I think we see that kind of trajectory. And then, one day you may want to have a humanoid form factor if you're going to go somewhere that biped and legs is actually needed.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I don't want to say debate, but this is the ongoing topic of conversation right now is what constitutes humanoid. I don't think that there's any official answer on that front. Obviously, like again, the conversation really changed over during the pandemic over the past several years to include legs, but we're having you at this forum that we're having in Seattle next month. It seems like you're defining it pretty broadly, and not only does Moxi not have legs, but Moxi only has the single arm manipulator right now.
Yeah, that's right. I think that, the other thing that's important about the humanoid form factor for, Moxie and how we designed it is also the head and how Moxie can show up in a socially expressive way using social cues like eye gaze to express intentions of where you're going
Mm.
and what you're thinking about and what you're doing. I would say that was, one of the reasons that, because otherwise, if you really just thought that the mobile and the manipulation part, you could have like a cart with an arm attached to it, and that would solve some of the same purposes. But for us, having the robot be able to indicate intentions with a socially expressive head and face was a big part of the humanoid form factor that I think is important for human robot interaction. If you're going to be working in close proximity to people, a lot of my background is in that human robot interaction and being able to kind of give those passive cues as to what the robot's doing.
Safety is a big part of that conversation. And thankfully right now it's a huge part of the conversation that we're having in and around industrial implementation. As far as actually getting Moxie out in the field, whether these sort of initial pilots or the scale that it's out right now, what kinds of things did you have to account for?
We took a very conservative, I would say we took a white glove view of
Mm.
safety and deployed like in our very initial days when we had our first deployments in 21 and 22, we would deploy with the equivalent of like a safety driver with AVs. So we had a lot of high
So you're doing
touch
teleop.
human. Well, it wasn't even teleop as much as eyes on some of the
Mm.
we're doing a lot of supervision of those early models and with someone that could intervene. So it was very human in the loop, and then we've been able to remove that over time in a very concerted way. And so now we have models built to really represent what we call like the safety bubble around Moxie that is appropriate for the crowded, busy environments. Because you have to have a safety bubble that makes sense in a crowded elevator. The robot has to expect that yeah, there's going to be people very close to me, and I may need to move even though people are very close to me, and you have to be able to reason about that in an appropriate way.
So like if you don't have a cage, what does the safety bubble look like for a robot?
Well, it depends on what the robot wants to be doing. So we have, so for example, if I know that the arm is going to move in a particular direction, I need to care very much about that workspace of that arm, but maybe I don't care very much about what's happening behind or beside me. And so those are some of the things that we think about as like really modeling out the workspace, similar to, if my end effector is extended and I'm just bringing it back, there's things that are more or less conservative in the manipulation space. Um, and a lot of times we are using we do use the head to indicate where the robot's end effector is going to be moving. So
Mm.
it's usually looking at the manipulation target before going there, and so that's a big part of how we help people understand what the robot's going to do.
That's interesting. And do you find that an act like that is just sort of something that people understand intuitively, that the head goes somewhere and the arm goes somewhere?
Yeah, yeah. The especially, because sometimes we do have the manipulator in particular move pretty slowly, and so I think that gets people to understand the robot's not just sitting there staring at the door. It's like sitting there looking at the button it's going to push and then pushing it, so they get used to that being the mode of operation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess obviously the safety concerns are different for a lot of different reasons. I mean, they're heightened in terms of the kinds of people that are around, right? I mean, we are talking about quite literally the most vulnerable people in our society who are in hospitals. But on the flip side, much like the robots that we're seeing in supermarkets right now, this isn't, a however, 50, 60, 70 pound robot that if it falls, it's going
Exactly.
to hurt somebody.
Well, and we're moving relatively slowly. We do move at like a really casual walking speed. People often ask like, how fast does Moxie go? It's like, well, Moxie does not travel in the hallways as fast as the base could go much faster than we actually do. And that's on purpose. That's so that people have an expectation of how fast the robot's going to go and how safe it's going to be. Um, the stopping distance and how much of a berth that you give people and things as you're going around them, that's something that we've worked hard to tune and make sure is appropriate for people's comfort. And that's the kind of thing that takes a lot of data to really have all of those experiences. I think that's really the power of a deployed fleet of robots, is that you have, at this point we have 40 to 50,000 hours of sensor
Mm.
data experience that has been captured across like experiences over between 20 to 25 different locations. So you just get a lot of edge cases. There's things that you could simulate and, learn in simulation or in a lab, and then you put those models out there and you put that behavior out there and it maybe doesn't, you catch all the edge cases and you're able to kind of bring that data back in to refine your models.
Has any edge case like really just really shocked you, really taken you by surprise that you could talk about?
Oh, I mean, I think so I do think that the fact how hard and how variable opening kind of ADA compliant doors and operating elevators. I think if you
Mm.
had told me, well, I think
That's
when
not
we
an
set
edge
out to.
case, though. I mean, that's like an everyday thing.
Right. And the edge cases of, solving it in the first two settings that we were in, we could do all the doors in the first two hospitals that we were in. And we were like, oh, great, we've solved ADA compliant
Mm.
doors. And then you go to the third hospital, and then you go to the fourth hospital, and then you go to one where you have to like scan a badge and then push a button. And then you go to one where they've like decided to put the button like right under a handlebar for some reason. And so there's all these different cases that you find that exactly the models that you had developed just don't quite translate. After about 5 to 10 settings, and all the edge cases in about 5 to 10 settings, we found that, we started to be able to, come into a new location and not find anything that we hadn't encountered before.
There's
But it just
some
takes time.
standardization with ADA.
Yes. The things that are standard tend to be, yeah, so, the reachability. So it has to, like an ADA button to open a door. So it has to be located within some reachability of a seated person. But other than that,
Mm.
we've seen a huge amount of environmental variability.
Yeah. I'm curious. One of the things in terms of again, most of the conversations that I'm having right now around humanoids are largely around factories and warehouses, and a lot of it is about getting the people who work alongside these robots to get used to them. Obviously, that's part of the hospital. That's nurses, doctors, anyone else who works there, but there's another factor here, which is hopefully if you're a patient, you're not visiting the hospital very often. Hopefully, like you don't have to see Moxi very often if you don't work there. So, in terms of setting expectations and in terms of actually like, do you believe that you will still be able to speed the robot up over time?
I think that we will be able to speed some aspects of the robot up, especially as I think as people get more used to automation in general. But I don't know that we'll want to go much faster than like a light walking, like a medium walking speed. I don't know that people want to see robots zipping around the
Yeah.
hospital. But people's reaction to Moxie has been it's been crazy how much people really like seeing robots in the hospital.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting to me is when we've had nurses and clinicians tell us that their patients really understand the value proposition like right away. Like they don't even have to say very much and they're like, "Oh, that makes so much sense." Like, of course, you should have that robot doing that, take that lab sample. So my nurse doesn't have to. And we'll have like patients explain like why Moxie's there to us. It's really interesting to see.
Something that I really wanted to talk to you about, and I'm trying to get better perspective on this, especially given some macro things that we won't go too deeply into in this conversation, is the question of scaling, right? I mean, we're talking right now outside of Diligent and maybe a couple of other examples in the field pilots, like just a couple of robots for the most part. It seems like scaling is going to take a long time, a lot of resources. I was in Austin maybe a year or two ago and visited your space, saw the some of the work that you're doing there in terms of assembly in person. Um, you have a unique perspective as far as actually scaling and delivering these things to the field. What are some of the major challenges that these companies are currently facing when it comes to really ramping up production?
Yeah, I think that is it's the key, like getting deployed and going through it's not just the production of the robots. I think if it was just producing robots and getting them working, that would be one problem. What we've spent years doing is solving the rest of the problems around getting a robot to be accepted into
Mm.
the change management required for an enterprise environment. So, a lot of what we've learned when we first started deploying robots and to today is even just how we talk about what those robots are doing. I know more about clinical workflows today than I did in 2020 when we were first starting to get out into market and really like try to like sell these robots to people. And so I think that's a big part of it is robots are new for any market that they're coming into. So exactly how that market wants to accept robots and implement automation. Everyone, like every hospital that we talk to, they don't want to be they don't want to do anything different than anyone else. They want to learn from us. They're like, hey, tell us how other people are using Moxi robots. We want to do whatever makes sense for everyone. And so I think that's part of what we've been able to learn over, 2, 3 years. Okay, well, we have these 5 different hospitals that have this clinical workflow around teleboxes, and they've had Moxi robots installed in this way. And people really appreciate that because, okay, great, I can copy that. We have teleboxes and we do central monitoring. And so I think that's as much as of the robot problem is the people and the change management and like how do you get these out into the world. And so solving some of that gives you that flywheel. So now we
Yeah,
have like, 90 to 100 robots. And so that flywheel lets us we get to deploy with an initial set of use cases, find all those edge cases, fix those models to be even better, and then we can, layer on new capabilities and kind of that's how we see scaling over time for sure.
it's still at a scale where you can be somewhat hands-on, it sounds like. So both you and Vivian are technical founders. At what point in the process, like, do you actually start bringing in people from the medical side, and what do you do to better get to know the actual challenges that people on that side are actually looking to solve with technology?
Yeah. Um, so we brought in a ton of healthcare expertise in our go-to-market team. Our sales leaders and sales team members are all kind of deeply it from a healthcare background. So that's really where we've learned a lot about the space and the problems that people are trying to solve, and how in a consultative sales kind of way we can help solve those problems with robots.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to start opening it up to questions. We've actually got a few
Yeah, great.
already in here. This is one I've actually been curious about myself. This comes from Holly C. Holly wants to know what the average lifespan of a Moxie robot is in terms of hardware.
It's a great question. We don't know that we have so we estimate like 5, 6 years as the lifetime of a robot, of a Moxie robot. But we do. also assume that there's going to be some maintenance and replacement costs over that 6 year time frame.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the other this has been interesting as well, watching a lot of technical founders who step into these executive roles is also like having to go to business school, whether like, literally or figuratively. So I'm going to give you a very business-minded question from Ravi D. As you evaluate the ROI of Moxi deployments, are there emerging KPIs or data points beyond hours saved that you see as critical to proving long-term value to the health system?
Great question. So we do find that our hospital customers are really they are going straight to like hours saved and the value of those hours, because there is such a critical workforce shortage in healthcare. Both nurses, there's like 200,000 open nurse positions projected annually for the next 10 years. And pharmacy is another one. Pharmacy techs, there's like 50,000 projected shortages of pharmacy techs next year. And so they're really looking to upskill that staff. So it's both the time that Moxi has been able to return to those teams and the opportunity cost of, like, if you didn't have Moxi doing deliveries, what else could that nurse be doing if they had more time? So we do think that eventually we're going to be able to tie some of the time savings that we're giving to clinical teams back to quality measures. We already see some anecdotes, like if you're an infusion center that is, and you have Moxi robots bringing those infusion meds in a really timely manner to from the pharmacy to the infusion clinic, they're seeing faster turnover of people being able to come in, get their infusion, and leave, which is great for their patient experience. So I think we're starting to see the beginnings of being able to tie to some higher level patient care and quality metrics.
That's interesting. So there are metrics that you can't even really measure. Like it's really like quality of life or quality of job metrics. And I suspect that one of these, like speaking of turnover, there's the turnover of the people who actually, are work in the hospital, which was a big problem during the pandemic. But it seems like the pandemic was, I don't want to say it had some positive side effects for you, but it was a real turning point for the company, or at least a real accelerator for the company.
Yeah, I think what happened during COVID is it really shown up, it shed a light on, or it put a big spotlight on the workforce challenges and just everything other than clinical care that nurses are being asked to do.
Mm.
I think a lot of people didn't realize that, there's stats showing that nurses only spend 30% of their time on direct patient care. And so
Mm.
I think COVID was the time when hospitals and administrators kind of said, wait, this doesn't make sense. We have a shortage of nurses. We really should be thinking of ways to offload some of the logistics and other things that they're doing. So that really helped us tell our story for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point. Yeah, I recently spoke with somebody who's developing a robot for aged care homes, and it's not the idea isn't to replace people. The idea is to replace tasks so that those people can actually interact with people in the roles that they should be. They can spend more time doing the things that they should be in their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is why I think that the most impactful robots are going to be, so we talk about how humanoids and robotics and AI powered robotics are just going to transform the global workforce. But I think the biggest category that robots are going to transform is ones where it's robots joining a team of people, because so like people plus robot teams is going to be a huge market. And it's because we want to upskill the people. We want to make sure that the people in that team are spending more time on, patient care or elder care or some other, thing that is uniquely human that we don't want to automate.
So yeah, so this is an interesting one from Raul. How do humans? Excuse me. Sorry, actually, oh, sorry. Okay. What are the primary regulatory frameworks? FDA, EU, MDR, ISOs, named a couple of ISOs. I'm not going to list off the numbers, specifically addressing humanoids in healthcare, and how do these differ, or do these differ significantly from compliance requirements in industrial robotics?
Yeah, great question. So we're not doing any patient care, or we're not directly interacting with patients. So we don't classify as a medical device, and so there's no FDA
Mm.
requirements. And so we're just regulated like a piece of equipment that would be in the hallway. Um, and some of the things that come up in terms of compliance are around infection prevention, how the robots get cleaned, having a proper process for and proper materials on the robot such that they can be cleaned with medical grade cleaners. That and information security. So in healthcare, especially with HIPAA and data privacy concerns, we work really closely with our hospital partners to ensure that they are comfortable with how data is flowing in and out of Moxi, and encryption protocols. And if we store data, that goes to a HIPAA compliant cloud, and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's been an especially big concern over the last several years. I mean, like ransomware is kind of
Hmm.
out of control in that space. So this is a long one, but from Ravi D, as Diligent continues to scale across diverse healthcare systems, how are you thinking about strategic partnerships, whether with EHR vendors, hospital groups, or logistics platforms, as levers to not only accelerate adoption, but to embed Moxi? I think this is the key part, to embed Moxi deeper into operational workflows beyond delivery tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are, we're certainly partnering with large health systems, and, thinking about how they are, automating across their whole system. Like that's one kind of partnership that we're absolutely pursuing. We have a new partnership with, like a co-selling partnership, actually, with a distribution channel. Actually, I don't know that I should. I think we're going to do a press release, so I won't say who it is.
Okay.
But
Stay tuned to
they, with
prwire.com slash
yeah,
diligent robotics.
exactly.
Yeah.
But we're looking at people that sell complementary things into the hospital and how we can be
Mm.
going to market together. Because if you think about, there is a lot of automation already in hospitals in terms of like pharmacy automation and lab automation. And so, so there's some very large companies that are already having automation being sold into hospitals. And so we're kind of a perfect partner to bring that kind of last mile delivery kind of automation. We are absolutely looking at EHR integration, and we have done implementations with a Cerner hospital. We've done a Cerner implementation with one of our hospital partners, and we're
Can you
in
explain for a
the
non-medical dummy
oh
like me
yeah.
what EHR is?
So the electronic health record is where
Mm.
everything about a patient is stored during their visit in the hospital, but also, just after their visit and everything. So, and it is really where everything about a patient's hospital stay is documented. Their nurses and doctors, they're all communicating in this patient health record. And so the idea is that as things get documented in the electronic health record, the discharge medications have been ordered for Brian, then Moxi could be automatically dispatched to the pharmacy and just automatically bring those medications to Brian's room. So those are the kinds of automations that we're working with hospitals to, automatically trigger Moxi to do tasks based on things that are happening in the electronic health record. So the two major EHR companies are Cerner, Oracle Cerner, and Epic. And so um, we've set up implementations in both of those. And so we're working with a lot of our different hospital partners to decide, what is it that you'd want to have Moxi automatically triggered to bring based on the health record.
So we've got one more question and we're also just about out of time. So we'll close on this. I'm going to tweak Jose's a little bit and ask you, and this is actually interesting. This will allow me to plug our upcoming event that we have Dr. Michael Yip from UCSD, who'll be showing off some interesting like teleops surgery work that they're doing with humanoid robots. So beyond this kind of assistive like helper form factor right now, what, if in any ways, do you see the humanoid form playing in hospitals or healthcare going forward?
Yeah, I think that for the purposes like for fitting into a human assistive human an environment where there's going to be a lot of human interaction. I think you're going to have the desire to have that kind of humanoid expressive capabilities. Beyond that, I think that we see increasing dexterity, being able to take on different kinds of support tasks. So today we're doing simple transport tasks, but we've been asked a lot around how could we be doing more to support logistics in and around surgical services? How could we be stocking and restocking shelves? Could we be delivering food trays and actually bringing things directly to patients? So I think these are all of the sort of logistical support that you might end up seeing. I do think that we're going to want to I do think we're going to want to stay away from direct patient care
Mm.
and directly providing patient care to people, and we leave that for people to take care of people. But I could see us taking on more of the support tasks to those clinical workers.
Well, I look forward to that and other lively conversations. We will be seeing you in Seattle at the Humanoid Robot Forum on September 23rd. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to everybody who tuned in.
Thanks, Brian.